Thank you those who are here live tonight for the presentation, and thank you to those who will join us by webcast later on, everyone who's registered. It's a joy to be with you. My name is Donna Mitchell-Moniak, and we'll be offering a class through Spirit Fire, an online class, second module in a series of 4. Each of them can be done independently, but it's always wonderful if somebody can do the whole semester and gain the value of everything building upon one another. With that in mind, we will engage tonight just a little bit of a preview and a preface to the next module that starts next Tuesday night. It is on the archetypes of spiritual evolution, and we'll talk a little bit about those archetypes, but more importantly, set up how we're going to engage them for the 5 weeks of the online class. One of the great thinkers and investigators of the human consciousness was Carl Jung. And Carl Jung spent most of his professional life exploring the dreams and the unconscious and the symbolism of dreams of his clients. He wrote extensively on such matters and, of course, lectured as well. And his work stands, and he is a giant and a genius in this regard of understanding the human psyche. Yet what he constantly brought forward was that the human psyche, the human consciousness, and a human being is constantly developing and doing so at a trajectory and at a momentum, whether or not the person realizes that that is what is going on. And this unto itself is significant because every human being is on a spiritual path. Whether they are agnostic, atheist, religious, spiritual, shamanistic, earth-based, heaven-based, or none of the above, and something quite different. Nonetheless, everyone, whether they are criminals or saints, and everywhere in between, is developing what we call our human beingness. And our human beingness and its trajectory, its methods, its path, and its momentum of development is archetypal and always has been. And we know that it always has been because it's been said and given to us through myths down through the ages. So what Jung brought forward, Joseph Campbell was bringing forward from a slightly different angle, but they met and overlapped largely in their work. They were contemporaries, Jung a bit before, or was born a bit before Campbell, but not by much, and they were contemporaries. And I'm beginning tonight's little preface of our class with these two geniuses, these two giants in the realms of the human psyche, its path, its development, and the archetypes that have been given to us over and over again through our history and cultures, because what they reported is some of what we will take up in the class, but we will do it through the traditions, through the tradition of Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, through the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, the Wheel of Life and the Wheel of Dharma, or Dakinis and Dakas. We will take it up through the medicine wheel of the Native American path. You see, all of this work that these two great people brought forward, and that I highly recommend anything that you could read by either of them. They reported truths that we have been reporting to ourselves over and over and over again, as long as we can see that we have been doing that. We have mythologized these archetypal presentations of our being. We have poetically rendered them. We have often shared the deepest information in secrecy through initiating ceremonies, through whispered or oral transmissions, through deep, dark caves and secret paintings on their walls. So what I want to do with the 5 weeks that we have, which is such a short period of time, but 5 weeks, 5 nights, is to look at some of this path. This path, the tree of life, the Kabbalah tree of life, is a path. The various presentations in Tibetan Buddhism, and there are various that speak of path. What is it in mystical Christianity that offers the same? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to begin with an earlier, if you will, or primary question of what is a human being? Well, a human being is not one thing. We cannot say a human being is one thing. We have Helen Keller in top left, Nelson Mandela when in his youth when he was in prison, the Dalai Lama top right. We have a Peruvian young woman, an Inuit young man, and Anne Frank on the bottom right. We could put anyone's picture here, contemporary or historical, and we would still be left with the fundamental question of what is a human being, because to look at these people and to see the variety of ways that they live their life, bring forward their intelligence, how they interacted with other human beings or other forms of life on our planet, how they interacted with themselves, their psyche, their unconscious, and their path, are all unique. Yet, I would suggest to you that all of them, from an archetypal point of view, you could tell where every single one of them was on their path, the spiritual development, because their life was expressing archetypes of the spiritual path. And it is that type of, if you will, clarity, that type of kind of scope back, big picture, and yet understand the detail that I want to offer in this class. Again, there are many possible answers to this question of what is a human being. We could answer it from any of these and strictly from any of them. And yet, to only do that would be like being the 4 blind men and the elephant. We would be reporting what we felt or sensed or saw or thought that we understood, but it would be incomplete. So this list is incomplete. It's not just that if we responded to the question from that angle or that level that it would be incomplete. Yes, that's true, but the list is incomplete. There is what is called the perennial wisdom. That is to say, like a perennial plant that just keeps coming up every new year. It is the same plant. It doesn't change. For instance, if it is a crocus, it will be a crocus next year that will come up at approximately the same time. April-ish here in New England. And it will be a crocus. And if it was a purple one, it will be a purple one. And it will be a purple one every year until the squirrels eat the bulb, and then it won't grow anymore. But perennial means just that. Perennial means that it keeps coming round. The perennial wisdom that we have been telling ourselves, writing to ourselves, making buildings to display, like megalithic structures, the imagery that we have been reporting to ourselves, be it Mayan, Aztec, Peruvian, Polynesian, Easter Island, somewhere in China, somewhere in Java, somewhere in the Black Hills of Dakota. It doesn't matter where they are. The imagery is fundamentally reporting the same things. Therefore, when we see a tree of life, the tree of life is simply an elongated, straightened out version of a circular form of the same thing. So when we have a tree of life and we have a medicine wheel by the native people of America, they're reporting fundamentally the same thing. Do we know that? Do we have an interest in that? If we have an interest in that, it not only will serve us from a kind of a shared pan-global understanding of humanity point of view, but rest assured, every aspect of the tree of life, every sephira, is going to tell us something about ourselves. And on the sacred hoop, or on the medicine wheel of the Native American people, and every stone being in a particular place, every stone represents something. And it basically represents exactly what the sephira represent. So whether we're talking about sephirot or we're talking about stones, we're talking about megalithic structures and how they are placed in coordination to the stars and the sun. Whether we're talking about the soul or we're calling the soul by any of its many names through humanity's cultures and traditions, like the ones you see here: Nu, Psyche, Daemon, Ba, Soul, Meahean, are just a few. It is this that is being reported to us, as well as its evolution, its path, its changes, its development, its eventual realizations, its acclamation of those realizations, such that they become the normal. When they become normal, that's called enlightenment. Instead of what is normal for most people, the vast majority, is a less aware state. It's actually called delusion by many traditions. So this perennial wisdom keeps coming around, like my sister who's looking back at us, just coming around again, rising up in Egypt, rising up in England, rising up in Palestine, rising up. It's the same wisdom. Do we know that? So a human being, this is my mother and my great niece. Do we know that in the similar way, in fact, almost exactly, in the same way that an infant will go through the developmental stages to becoming an adult and finally becoming an elder, in the same way, we go through quite archetypal stages. It is an archetypal stage when a baby is learning to walk. And in that months that are somewhere between 9 months usually and 14 months, that is an archetypal stage, and any parent, certainly any mother, knows that stage, just like we know, quote unquote, the terrible twos. just like we know, quote unquote, the social fours. And we know the awkward 11s. And we know and know and know and know because we've lived that and we've watched our children grow through them. These are archetypal phases of a human being's development simply as a social being. But similarly so, there are archetypal traditional points: birth, baptism, transfiguration, and renunciation, as example, leading to mastership, as examples. There are the bringing forward of our masculine energy, the bringing forward of our feminine energy, the blending of the two through various practices of meditation or yoga or contemplation or mystical rapture. There are learning how to elevate our thoughts such that we eventually learn how to levitate from the thoughts that we create. We ascend. So all of these factors, which have been given to us again in imagery and poetry and in the writings and mystical musings of so many people, these are archetypal. And it is these that I want to engage with you in the next upcoming class. The stages basically move us through processes of self-understanding. That's the longest part of it. And on this Tibetan image, that goes up easily, almost the full length of the whole path. Almost the full length. If you see, finally, the elephant is behind the monk, only at the top level of the white part of the path, not the rainbow part of the path. So we are spending a long time, who knows how many root races even, if we want to think about it that way, just understanding ourselves. Because when we understand ourselves, to quote the ancient saying, understand thyself, for in thyself is all there is to be known. So our processes of self-understanding, which have their phases and stages and archetypal junctures, those will lead us to understanding others, understanding everything, actually, to understand the universality of ourself, that whatever we are experiencing, be it positive and beneficial or negative and detrimental, we are experiencing harm, we are experiencing harmlessness, etc. Whatever we are experiencing is a universal experience. It's not just another human being that experiences it either. It's animals, it's plants, it's the planet, it's the solar system, it's the cosmos. These are significant things to become aware of. This is why it takes us so long, and it's so important to understand ourselves in every way possible, in any way possible. That and that alone is what's going to lead to the consciousness of a master, a saint, a yogi, an adept, an enlightened being. So it's these junctures of the path that we would explore. Everyone is on a point on the path. Now, that can sound really reductive. And it would sound reductive because there might not be much understanding about what the path is, or more or less a linear, narrow understanding of what the path is. The path isn't linear and it isn't narrow. We experience a linearity to aspects of the path because that's where we are within our collective consciousness. We're within kind of a sequentiality, linear, one-dimensional, right? So we look out, if you lift your eyes from your computer right now, you look at the room you're sitting in, it seems pretty basic dimensionality, unless you have extrasensory perception, and for you, the room is multidimensional. If the room for you is multidimensional on a common basis, well, then the path is multidimensional to you. You understand that, you live that, you sense that, you're aware of that. But I think most people are not aware of that because how they interact with themselves and how they interact with others and their reality is fairly linear, it's fairly sequential, fairly cause and result oriented. So because of that, we think the path is narrow and we think the path is sequential. There's a lot more to know. There's a lot more to sense. There's a lot more to open our eyes, our heart, our awareness to, even of our own, just sitting here in our room. So that opening of our awareness, that exploration of archetypes is what we would do. Even just the idea of a maze. The maze is an archetype. To be confused, to be lost, to be not feeling like you have direction. That is an archetype. And there are people whose whole life is to be at that point on the path where they are shifting, where it's important that they not be dedicated, diligent, self-sacrificing, and dedicated to something that they really don't understand mentally and have only been able to do that kind of through faith or belief. And so they might go a lifetime or a whole section of a lifetime where they might feel quite lost in a labyrinth, in a maze, because it's actually, from a consciousness point of view, very important that they not be hooked into something that they really don't understand. And that instead, they learn to pull on something deeper and find out the string of truth, the thread of truth that is more substantial, whatever that is. The beauty about the path is that all the stages weave together. It is one whole, of course. And it's kind of like looking at an acorn, and as the acorn sprouts, first, everything of the great oak tree that will one day grow is complete within the acorn. It didn't come from somewhere else, it's complete within the acorn. But as the acorn sprouts and actually becomes a sprout and then a little baby tree, it will start to reveal to itself and to anyone else that's looking that there's an awful lot going on all at once within this little baby tree. There's stretching and growing and strengthening and deepening. There is new parts being developed and figured out how to stand in them and find their strength, find new strength within oneself as a result. always new stature, always new contexts and contours. That's us too. Change is a great gift of being a human being. Of course, it's a great gift of being on Earth. Everything is constantly in flux and change. And human beings actually are designed to thrive on that. Whereas the delusion of stability is what we choose for quite some time. And that is a delusion. And it actually leaves us quite unstable because then our stability is predicated upon that which is outside of us instead of the stability of inside of us. And the stability born of the inside is very at home with change and impermanence and the constant growth and development that change will bring, just like the oak tree. One of the things also that all the archetypes of the path remind us is that circumstances and people constantly weave into and create our reality. Even if we just think about some of the old Greek myths that maybe you might have a familiarity with, or modernly it would be like comic book characters, right? So there is, in the old Greek myth, let's say that it's Jason and the Argonauts, and he's on the mission to get the golden fleece. Well, Jason can't do that alone. First off, he needs the Argonauts. And second off, he needs advice from whoever is his mentor at any given time along the journey. And if it's a modern day myth, let's say that it's Superman. Superman's circumstances are that he comes from another planet. His weakness is something of that other planet. And the people and the circumstances, the ones that are beneficial and the ones that are detrimental, are going to weave in and out of Superman's existence and affect whether Superman can bring forward his strengths or if he has to go inside to develop something new, to develop a new strength or a new relationship to an inner strength. And for all of us, it's the same. That's our path. And along that path, there are junctures. They're significant. Sometimes they're actually initiations of our consciousness. That's rare. And yet at the same time, we have many significant experiences throughout our life. Are they all initiations? No, they're not. They can't possibly be. Are they insights? Are they realizations? Are they expansions of ourself? Do they demand us to expand ourselves? Yes, absolutely. And from them, do we grow in insight? Do we grow in virtue? Do we grow? Absolutely. Even if we don't think we are. So, one of the things that we'll look at in our short 5 weeks is what do things have in common? We did that with the first module with theology as well. We looked at various factors that were kind of out of the box. That class was an out of the box look at theology, and this is going to be a fairly out of the box look at the archetypes of the human path. I'm not going to make anything up, but I'm probably going to combine things that, aren't usually combined or that we'd have to just do on our own. We'd have to combine them on our own. And that's fine. That's called synthesis. So when we look at the path, we have to ask, what do certain things have in common? Like the tree of life, like a medicine wheel, like the wheel of life of Buddhism. what do they not have in common? Actually, there isn't much that they don't have in common, except maybe shape. And then that's simply a matter of, again, is something long and linear instead of round and circular? Well, that's simply knowing that distinction. Similarly so, if we add, a theosophical or a trans-Himalayan kind of point of view on it, or investigate mystical Christianity, what will we discover of these archetypes of our path and where we are on our path? Again, not in a reductive, put a tack on the wall, I am here, or not in the way of some of the englamored processes within, let's say, certain study groups or certain reading groups where, I'm at such and such an initiation and that kind of thing. No, that's not what we're talking about. First off, because that is englamored. Second off, it's nobody's business if anybody actually knows. And to actually know is really rare because there's so many layers and levels. Because it's not linear and it's not sequential. Because the whole process is so multidimensional. But that's why the imagery has been given to us. Because imagery is unto itself trying to report dimensionality, not two-planed or one-dimensional, not one or two dimensions, although we have to look at things usually in one or two dimensions. So for instance, in my mind, all these three images are reporting very similar things. And I see their similarities, and that's what I want to share with you all, is share with you all how to also see their similarities. And furthermore, not just see them in shape or color or form, but to see in your life that similarity, to understand what it is reporting. What is your life reporting to you about where is your focus on the path? Are you focused correctly? Is your life steering you in a way that you understand you're being steered, so that then you can add your personal will to this greater will that is kind of, again, steering, driving you along a spiritual evolutionary path. So join me. Let's do this together. I'm very excited, as of course I always am, about the online classes. I'm very excited in what gets brought forward and the group fields that are created and the questions and sharings that come forward from them when they do. I think this will be a wonderful adventure, actually. And it's simply going to report to us, or open to each of us, that we are the tree of life, that we are the Rosicrucian cross, that we are the Holy Grail, that we are the Dharma Wheel, that we are living these archetypes of the path. This is how and why Jung can see it in everybody's dreams. This is how and why Joseph Campbell can spend 30 or 40 years of his professional life just constantly teaching and writing and showing us the imagery on great big screens. It's because it's real, it's true. And it's that I want to share with you. So join me. Register at spiritfire.com. Go to education on the top navigation button if you want, or on the big screen you'll see it, education. Click and it'll bring you right to the right page. The class starts next Tuesday night. It'll be lovely to have you join us. Everything is optional in my online classes. We all live very full lives. Now, having said that, that is to say that what reading I might suggest is optional, Any videos I might suggest is optional. Even contemplation, and if you want to share any of your contemplations, all of it's optional. However, does the student, the participant, gain far more from doing any of this? Yeah, absolutely. Greatly so. But at the same time, it's all optional. So, and of course, the beauty of an online class is that should there be, if the timing is not good for you, your work schedule, your family life schedule, whatever are your responsibilities, and everything is webcasted and posted on the following day and made available to the students so that they can partake in it at a time that's convenient and, restful for that person. So join me, I hope you will, and tell your friends. Love to have you there. Thank you for coming tonight. Is there any thoughts or questions before we go? I see you, Sandra. I hope it is exciting. I'm excited about it, but you can hear that in my voice. Thank you. Then we hope to see you next week. And be well, everyone. Have a great evening.